She was a quiet woman seeking work, and the rancher risked his life to keep her safe. She arrived at the ranch just before dawn, when the sky was neither night nor morning but something fragile in between. A pale gray stretched thin over the plains, as if the world itself were holding its breath. Her boots were worn, her coat too light for the chill, and her eyes stayed low, not from weakness, but from long practice. People who had learned pain early often walked that way, careful not to invite questions, careful not to be seen too clearly. She carried no bags, no letters of recommendation, only the quiet determination of someone who had nowhere left to go but forward. When the rancher first saw her standing by the fence, mist curling around her like a ghost that hadn't yet decided to leave this world, he thought she was part of the morning fog. He was a man shaped by hard land and harder years, broad-shouldered, slow-moving, his face carved by sun and regret, someone who had learned not to expect surprises anymore. Yet something about her stillness unsettled him. She didn't call out. She didn't wave. She just waited. When he finally approached, the dogs barking behind him, she lifted her eyes only briefly and said in a soft voice that barely disturbed the air, "I heard you might need help. I can work." No name. No story. Just those 4 words. Most ranchers would have turned her away. Women alone brought trouble, questions, rumors, but he didn't. Maybe it was the way her hands trembled slightly in the cold, or the bruises she didn't quite hide beneath her sleeves, or the fact that she stood like someone expecting to be chased away. He told her the work was hard, the hours long, the pay small. She nodded as if he'd offered her a gift. That was the first sign. People who have suffered don't negotiate, they accept. He gave her a place in the old bunkhouse, a list of chores, and one rule: stay out of trouble. She nodded again. For days she worked without complaint, rising before sunrise, sleeping after dark, speaking only when spoken to. The ranch hands noticed her quietness, the way she flinched at raised voices, the way she always positioned herself near exits. The rancher noticed something else: she never laughed, but sometimes, when she thought she was alone, she would hum, a low, broken melody that sounded like memory trying to survive. Trouble came sooner than expected. A man arrived one afternoon on a black horse, dust trailing behind him like a warning. He asked questions. Too many. About a woman. About a ranch. About whether anyone new had passed through. The rancher felt it in his gut before he saw it in her face, the color draining, her hands shaking as she ducked behind the barn. That night she tried to leave. He found her packing nothing, ready to disappear the same way she had arrived. "They'll come," she said finally, her voice cracking for the first time. "They always do." That was when he understood, this wasn't just a woman seeking work. This was someone running for her life. He could have let her go. He could have told himself it wasn't his problem. Instead, he locked the gates, loaded his rifle, and told her, "As long as you're here, no one touches you." In that moment, without knowing her past, without knowing the cost, the rancher made a decision that would change both their lives forever. The night they came for her, the wind howled across the plains like a living thing, rattling windows and bending the tall grass low, as if the land itself was trying to hide. 3 riders appeared at the edge of the property, silhouettes against the moonlight, guns visible, intentions clear. The rancher stood on the porch, rifle steady, heart pounding not with fear but with a strange, burning resolve he hadn't felt in years. He had buried a wife, buried dreams, buried the part of himself that believed he could still protect anyone, but standing there, knowing she was hiding in the cellar below, knees pulled to her chest, whispering prayers she didn't believe would be answered, something old and fierce woke inside him. The men demanded he hand her over. Said she belonged to them. Said she was stolen property. That was when she finally told him the truth later, that she had escaped a life of ownership, of being sold, beaten, silenced, that she had run until her lungs burned and her hope nearly died. The rancher didn't care about their reasons. He cared about one thing: no human being belonged to another. Shots were fired. Wood splintered. One bullet grazed his arm, hot and sharp, but he didn't fall. He fired back, not to kill, but to warn, to draw a line that could not be crossed. The standoff lasted until dawn, until sirens echoed in the distance, lawmen called by a rancher who had quietly ridden through the storm to get help. The men fled. Silence followed. When it was over, she came out into the light, shaking, eyes wide, expecting blame, anger, rejection. Instead, the rancher handed her a cup of coffee with his uninjured hand and said, "You're safe. And you can stay as long as you want." She cried then, not loud, not dramatic, but the kind of crying that empties years of fear from the soul. In the weeks that followed, the ranch healed in small ways. She learned to smile. He learned to sleep without nightmares. She planted flowers by the fence. He fixed the roof she pointed out. Two broken lives didn't magically become perfect, but they became steady. And sometimes, that's enough. The world didn't change overnight. Danger didn't disappear forever. But one man had chosen to stand, and one woman had finally found a place where running was no longer necessary. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that bravery can look like kindness, and strength can look like protection, then subscribe to the channel. Because stories like this deserve to be told, and courage deserves to be remembered.